The distress call was desperate. An entire battalion lost, enemies surrounding the final stronghold, and Earth responded by sending only one human. The alien commanders laughed until the sky cracked open and the ground began to bleed. They were surrounded. The Ellerin 7th Infantry, along with 3 Allied planetary detachments, had taken their final stand in the ruins of what was once Outpost Delta 3. Their reinforcements were gone, their orbital links severed, supplies depleted, the skies filled with hostile war cruisers, and the planet's surface swarmed with Kithan shock troops, beasts in armor who'd never lost a war. Captain Vrel, commander of the last Allied unit, ducked under a collapsing pillar as an artillery shell screamed overhead. His second-in-command, a young Zalari named Thoxa, slid behind cover, his breathing rapid. They said Earth received the distress signal. Thoxa gasped. Where are their reinforcements? Vrel gave him a bitter smile. You're expecting battalions. Maybe even a fleet. Aren't you? Aren't you? Vrel didn't respond. He only stared at the distant sky, where blue streaks of plasma danced like distant lightning. We'll be dead in 2 hours, he said at last. They're just taking their time. Suddenly, the comm crackled. It wasn't much, a brief digital squawk, then a single, calm voice that didn't match any registered signature on the Allied frequencies. Incoming. 1 unit. ETA 60 seconds. Vrel blinked. 1 unit? What does that mean? Before Thoxa could respond, the sky split open. Literally. The clouds ruptured like torn paper. A single streak of silver light fell from orbit, faster than atmospheric limits allowed, trailing plasma and fire. It didn't drift, it speared toward the battlefield. It hit with the sound of a god slamming a fist into stone. The entire ridge shook. Shockwaves blasted enemy troops off their feet. The old outpost wall cracked apart, and even the Kithan siege crawlers reared back from the blast zone. Dust rose. Then silence. No movement. No fleet. No mechs. Just a crater in the earth, glowing with molten edges. And from it, something stood up. Vrel squinted. Is that? A humanoid figure emerged, black armor reflecting firelight, visor unreadable, steps calm. No insignia. No command tag. No backup. Just one. Thox's voice cracked. That's it. That's the rescue. The figure raised a hand, and from the forearm, 3 blinking spheres launched silently into the air. They hovered for a moment, then detonated into a shimmering sphere that expanded outward. EMP shockwave. Every Kithan drone in a kilometer radius shorted out instantly. The figure moved. Not quickly, not with flash, just decisively. Vrel watched in stunned silence as the human walked straight into the enemy lines. A dozen plasma rifles turned on him. Fired. All at once. None hit. The air bent. Light curved. Some kind of personal distortion field. A prototype. Or maybe something Earth hadn't bothered sharing with the rest of the galaxy. Then the retaliation came. From the human's back, a weapon snapped forward over the shoulder. It looked like a railgun, but with no sound, no recoil. The human fired once. 1 Kithan soldier exploded. Another shot. A walker lost its legs. 3rd shot. The very ground beneath the squad ignited. And still, the human walked. The Allied forces stared, and the enemy began to hesitate. Who was that? Thoxa whispered. I don't know, Vrel replied. But we need to move. Now. While they're confused, they surged from cover, rallying the wounded, dragging supplies. As they pushed forward, they watched the lone figure devastate an entire flank. By the time the human reached the second ridge, 42 enemy soldiers were down, and not a single shot had touched him. Then the Kithan champion arrived. Massive, 2 stories tall, covered in armor thick enough to resist orbital fire. He dropped from a carrier ship with thunder, slamming into the earth like a meteor. His warhammer crackled with red plasma, and his roar shook birds from the sky. Even Vrel flinched. Not even a human can take that. The warrior didn't flinch, didn't speak, just walked forward. The Kithan swung. Too slow. The human ducked, slid under the hammer. A blade flicked out from the gauntlet, almost ceremonial. Just a sliver of metal. But it sliced through the champion's kneecap like paper. The beast fell, roared, swung again, blocked, countered. Then silence. The champion collapsed, throat slit, armor pierced with surgical precision. And again, the human walked forward. Vrel stared at the devastation. That's not a soldier. That's not a rescue. He turned to Thoxa, voice hollow. That's an execution team. The smell of scorched earth clung to everything. By the time the alien forces regrouped, the lone human had already advanced well beyond the first enemy line. A wave of fleeing Kithan soldiers limped away, trailing wounded comrades, murmuring of a shadow made of metal and the death that walks. Captain Vrel didn't believe in superstition, but even he couldn't ignore the tide of battle turning on the back of one human. Allied command's not going to believe this, Thoxa murmured beside him. One unit. Just one. And he's cutting through them like he knows the terrain better than they do. He does, Vrel replied grimly. Look at his movement. He's not just attacking. He's baiting, hurting, driving them where he wants. But toward what? Vrel narrowed his eyes at the human, now calmly scaling the ridge that separated the southern and central fronts. I don't know, he said, but I think we're about to find out. A new rumble shook the ground. Low at first, then building. Not from above, but below. Thoxa gasped. Burrowers. The Kithan's subterranean units. From the cracked ground behind the human, two massive siege worms erupted, each the length of a freight hauler, plated with reinforced bone, armed with mounted energy cannons. Their emergence had spelled doom for entire outposts before. But the human didn't flee. Instead, he turned, slowly, and crouched. His hand touched the earth. Then, with a sudden shimmer, something shimmered into visibility behind him. A small, hovering black sphere. No larger than a helmet. Thoxa blinked. What is that? Before anyone could guess, the sphere unleashed a sudden burst of bluish light. And the worms stopped moving. Dead. They didn't explode. Didn't scream. They simply froze. Mid-crawl. Mid-bite. And then their bodies, impossibly, began to fold inward, imploding into themselves, metal and flesh alike twisting into microscopic cubes. Nanoweapon, Vrel breathed. A compression singularity. I've only seen those in classified Earth research archives. And that's just a support tool? Thoxa muttered. That's not even his main weapon. Vrel nodded slowly. We need to find out his designation. At that moment, the comm crackled again. This time, intentionally. The voice that spoke was low. Calm. Male. Unit E-1, Designation Guardian. Objective, planetary extraction of surviving Allied forces. Target threat level, planetary scale hostile engagement. Clearance granted for unrestricted method. Vrel's blood ran cold. Unrestricted. They weren't just sending a rescue op. Earth had classified this entire battlefield as a cleansing zone. The lone human had authority to wipe it clean. And no one, not even Allied command, could override him. Meanwhile, the Kithan Command Council aboard the flagship Vrothar was in chaos. General Carr slammed his armored fist into the console. You told me Earth would hesitate. Admiral Brashin clicked his mandibles nervously. They did hesitate. There was a delay of 5 planetary cycles. Then explain that. He pointed to the dozens of shattered Kithan battalions, reduced to wreckage by a single black-armored human moving with mechanical precision through enemy lines. It's not just a soldier, one of the junior tacticians whispered. It's a system, a protocol, a weapon disguised as a man. Carr growled. They could have sent an armada. Instead, they sent one. That is not military strategy. That is message, Brashin interrupted softly. They looked at him. It's a message, he repeated. They're saying, we don't need fleets. We don't need negotiations. One of us is enough. Silence fell. And then Carr hissed. Kill him. On the ground, Guardian E1 kept moving. He didn't celebrate, didn't hesitate, just adjusted his trajectory and moved forward with terrifying efficiency. He scanned the ruins ahead. Life signs, 17. 9 injured. 3 critical. 1 dying. Objective, stabilize. His HUD displayed tactical projections, optimal threat routes, time to impact on 3 different missile volleys inbound. He launched countermeasures with the flick of a thought. All 3 missiles detonated midair. Behind him, Vrel's team had started pushing forward, no longer hiding, but using the chaos to evacuate the wounded and reclaim lost ground. Sir, Thoxa called over the comms. That human just disabled an entire supply corridor. Our scouts are calling the path safe. Vrel nodded. Then we move. I don't care if he's a soldier or a demon. As long as he clears a path, we follow it. But Guardian E1 had already moved on. Ahead lay the central enemy staging camp, a heavily fortified position guarded by over 400 troops, 2 anti-air plasma towers, and a command node wired directly into the Kithan orbital fleet. He needed no backup. His systems confirmed full clearance. Unrestricted method. A silent pulse from his suit triggered buried protocols. Tiny drones scattered from his armor, worming through cracks, floating on wind currents, crawling through ventilation shafts. Inside the camp, no one noticed. Until the lights flickered. Until weapons refused to fire. Until command feeds went silent. Then, panic. Then, the sky turned white. A dome of light swept through the camp. No heat. No shrapnel. Just absolute silence. When it faded, the camp was empty. Nothing remained. No bodies. No weapons. Just ash. From orbit, Carr watched it happen. The camp, his central command zone, was gone. He turned to Brashen, voice trembling. What kind of creature is that? Brashen didn't answer. Because the human was looking up, directly at them, as if he could see them through the atmosphere. And then he raised his arm and pointed at the sky. Back on the ground, Vrel reached the remains of the enemy's staging area with a squad of reinforcements. There was no battle. There was no fight. The air still shimmered from the residual energy field. And in the center stood the human, untouched, visor still reflecting flame. Vrel approached cautiously. Unit E1, he began, Captain Vrel of the Ellerin Alliance. We're grateful, but I need to understand. Are you truly alone? The visor shifted slightly. A voice emerged, flat, but unmistakably human. I am Earth's guardian. That is sufficient. Vrel swallowed. There are more outposts like us. More survivors. Can you help? The human nodded. All will be extracted. All hostiles will be erased. Thoxa leaned in. You mean you're going to wipe them all out? The visor turned to him. Yes. Far above, Carr was already screaming into command channels. Evacuate. Retreat from the surface. Break atmosphere. But it was too late. Earth's Guardian had already activated the next phase. From orbit, stealth drones flickered into visibility. And the Kithan fleet began to vanish, one ship at a time, silent bursts of blue light, no debris, no survivors. Not destruction, erasure. The orbital view was chaos. Kithan fleet ships spun and scattered like panicked insects, their formations crumbling the moment the first vessel blinked out of existence. The flagship Vrothar shook as feedback from the destruction of its sister ships fried key systems. On the bridge, alarms screamed as the command crew scrambled to restore order. This is a trap, Carr hissed, mandibles twitching in fury. This entire battlefield was a setup. A trap set by a single human, Brashen said quietly, his mandibles clicking nervously. He's not just killing our forces, he's unraveling our infrastructure. Carr turned to the tactical officer. Give me a direct line to orbital command. Initiate fallback protocols. Abandon planetary control. The officer hesitated. Sir, orbital command is not responding. Carr's eyes widened. What? It's not just the ground. They're gone, sir. Entire relays, data banks, command ships, deleted. No debris. No signals. Just gone. Carr roared in fury and slammed his fist into the console. He's not a soldier. He's a doomsday device in human skin. On the planet, Vrel watched as the Kithan fleet fell apart from the ground. The sky, once blotted with the silhouettes of warships, was now scattered with vanishing flashes of blue light. He could hardly believe his own eyes. Thoxa, standing beside him, stared in awe. Do you think this is how Earth fights wars now? With ghosts and shadows? If so, Vrel muttered, they've evolved into something terrifying. Ahead of them, Guardian E1 moved with silent precision, cutting through what remained of enemy resistance. Small Kithan platoons, once deadly threats, now scattered at the mere sight of him. He didn't fire indiscriminately. He was efficient, tactical, surgical. He didn't just kill. He dismantled. But not all the Kithan were cowards. In the shadows of the final stronghold, the fortress of HFY, the heart of the planetary campaign, a new presence stirred. A commander who had never known defeat. High Commander Vurask, a veteran of 6 planetary campaigns, watched the feeds with cold, reptilian calm. He was taller than most of his kind, armored in red and black composite plates, and his eyes glowed with cybernetic enhancement. He fights alone, Vurask said, addressing the remaining war council. And yet we cower. That ends now. One of the lesser officers dared speak. Sir, even the flagship. The flagship fell to panic, Vurask interrupted. But I have seen what humans are. They are dangerous, yes. But they bleed. They die. And this one will too. He pointed to the tactical table, displaying Guardian E1's trajectory. He's coming here. Good. Let him. The path to HFY Fortress was lined with traps. Guardian E1 encountered seismic disruptors, stealth snipers, and genetically modified shock beasts bred for close-quarters annihilation. None survived contact. The Guardian adapted instantly to each new threat, changing loadouts mid-battle, utilizing terrain as if it were custom-built for him. He never stopped moving. He didn't need rest. He didn't need reinforcement. He was Earth's final argument. When he reached the outer gates of the fortress, it was already burning. Kithan's soldiers manned the walls, screaming into comms for backup that would never come. The Guardian looked up, scanning the structure. He found its weakness. With a gesture, he summoned the compression drone again. But this time it multiplied. 3, 10, 20. The drones descended like judgment, each one humming, glowing with barely contained singularity energy. And the gates crumbled. Inside, Commander Vurask prepared. He stood at the center of his personal combat ring, surrounded by 10 elite enforcers, the strongest, fastest, and deadliest Kithan bred for war. The room was shielded against all forms of external interference. No drones, no air support, just him and the Guardian. The doors blew open, and the human entered. He stepped through smoke and fire like a phantom, black armor gleaming, visor reflecting the burning walls. In his hand, he held no visible weapon. I am High Commander Vurask, the Kithan growled. I have crushed empires and burned cities. Do you think your tricks will work here? The Guardian tilted his head, and then moved. The first enforcer charged, and was on the ground in pieces before he finished his first roar. The second activated a plasma halberd, and the Guardian sidestepped, disarmed him, and used the weapon to impale the third. It wasn't just speed. It was predictive motion. The Guardian saw the fight 3 steps ahead. In under a minute, the 10 enforcers were gone. Vurask snarled and drew his warblade, a 6-foot monstrosity forged from neutronium. He charged, and for the first time, the Guardian paused. He allowed the Kithan to close the gap, allowed the blade to swing, and then, in a motion too fast for even enhanced eyes to track, the Guardian caught it. With one hand, the blade shrieked against his gauntlet, and then the gauntlet activated a pulse. The sword shattered. Vurask stumbled back. The Guardian advanced. You are no god, Vurask spat. The Guardian responded, for the first time, with emotion. Not anger. Not cruelty. Pity. No. But I am your reckoning. He struck once. Vurask fell. Outside, the fortress collapsed. Vrel and his team arrived just in time to see the Guardian emerge from the smoke. There was no triumph in his stance. No pride. Just completion. Thoxa stepped forward. It's done. The Guardian nodded. Planetary threat neutralized. Extraction begins now. Above them, orbital transport ships shimmered into view, cloaked Earth vessels, waiting for the call. Thousands of survivors across the planet began to receive the same signal. This is Earth. Your Guardian has cleared the way. Come home. Far away, in the ruins of the Kithan Command, a transmission played. It was brief, unencrypted. This is Earth. We do not start wars. But if you take our people, we will end yours. The message ended. The galaxy took note. The air inside the shattered fortress was thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. Guardian E1 moved forward, every step calculated and silent, like a predator hunting its prey. Vrel and Thoxa followed cautiously behind, their sensors scanning for any remaining hostiles. Despite the apparent victory, the tension was palpable. The fortress was a labyrinth of corridors, each one potentially hiding death traps or enemy reinforcements. Vrel's comm crackled faintly. Extraction is delayed. Unknown resistance forces detected in Sector Delta 9. Thoxa frowned. We're not out of the woods yet. Vrel's antenna twitched. The Kithan are not known for surrender. They will fight to their last breath, especially after this defeat. The Guardian paused at a junction, tilting his head as if listening to some sound only he could hear. His visor glowed faintly, scanning for movement. Suddenly, a burst of plasma fire erupted from a side corridor. Ambush! Vrel shouted. Without hesitation, the Guardian threw himself into cover, the plasma bolts scorching the walls just inches from his armor. Vrel and Thoxa returned fire, their energy weapons carving arcs of blue light in the dim corridor. The enemy was relentless, a squad of genetically enhanced Kithan shock troops, bred specifically for close-quarter battles. Their armor shimmered with adaptive camouflage, making them difficult targets. The Guardian, however, moved with uncanny precision. Using a combination of enhanced reflexes and strategic thinking, he deployed a series of mini-drones that swarmed the attackers, disabling their weapons and disorienting their senses. Within moments, the ambush was neutralized. Breathing heavily, Vrel approached the Guardian. "We can't let our guard down. This was just a scouting party. There's more waiting for us." The Guardian nodded, and they pressed onward. Deeper into the fortress, the group encountered a massive chamber, the Kithan warlord's personal armory. Rows upon rows of advanced weaponry lined the walls, from plasma rifles to experimental energy cannons. Thox's eyes gleamed with fascination. If we can secure these weapons, it could turn the tide on many battlefronts. Vrel agreed, but remained cautious. "We only have time for what we can carry. Prioritize the most effective." As they gathered equipment, a sudden tremor shook the fortress. The ground beneath them cracked, and the distant sound of heavy machinery rumbled through the walls. "Reinforcements," Vrel said grimly. "They're mobilizing something big." The Guardian's visor flashed red, locking onto an unknown signal. Something approaching. Very large. Outside, the sky darkened as massive Kithan war machines emerged from underground tunnels. These towering constructs, a blend of biomechanical and heavy artillery, moved with terrifying speed toward the fortress. Vrel radioed the approaching transports. "Extraction is compromised. We have to hold the fortress until backup arrives." The Guardian prepared for the coming assault. He activated his combat mode fully, energy crackling around his armor as his systems calibrated to the enemy's unique signatures. The first wave of war machines struck with earth-shaking force. Plasma beams tore through walls, and the ground quaked beneath the thunder of their heavy footsteps. The Guardian fought like a tempest, weaving between blasts, using the fortress's layout to his advantage. He deployed a tactical EMP pulse that temporarily disabled the war machine's energy shields, allowing his allies to target their weak points. Vrel and Thoxa coordinated a counterattack, using the fortress's turrets and their newly acquired weapons to chip away at the advancing forces. Despite their efforts, the Kithan machines pressed forward relentlessly. In the chaos, Vrel noticed a different kind of enemy, a stealth operative moving through the shadows, targeting the command systems. "Guardian, we have an infiltrator," he warned. Without hesitation, the Guardian pursued the shadowy figure through twisting corridors, their fight turning into a deadly game of cat and mouse. The infiltrator was a master of deception, striking from the dark and disappearing before retaliation. But the Guardian's enhanced sensors gradually closed the gap. Cornered in an ancient hall, the infiltrator revealed himself, a cybernetically enhanced assassin, his armor covered in shifting patterns that mimicked the surroundings. The battle was brutal and silent. Blades clashed, energy flares illuminated the chamber, and the assassin's speed pushed the Guardian to his limits. But in the end, the Guardian's strategic thinking and superior reflexes triumphed. He disarmed the assassin, and with a precise strike, incapacitated him. Back in the main chamber, the battle raged on. The Guardian returned just in time to see one of the war machines breach the inner defenses. Without hesitation, he engaged the behemoth directly, leaping onto its armored hull and striking critical nodes. The machine exploded in a spectacular display of fire and metal. As the last of the war machines fell, the sky cleared. The distant hum of reinforcements grew louder. Vrel breathed a sigh of relief. Backup is here. From the skies, Earth's warships descended, their sleek forms a stark contrast to the Kithan machines. The Guardian looked to the horizon. The war was far from over, but for now, Earth's champion had held the line. The massive Kithan war machines lay smoldering in twisted heaps of molten alloy and shattered biocomponents. The air was thick with ozone, scorched dust, and the faint buzz of overloaded energy cells. Above the ruined fortress, the sky shimmered as Earth's warships finally descended. Sleek, Angular vessels shaped by human innovation, their dark hulls absorbed light like predators cloaked in space. One by one, they broke through the upper atmosphere, engines humming with controlled fury. Vrel stood beside the Guardian, watching in silence. These ships were not like anything he had ever seen in his time serving with alien fleets. No frills, no ceremonial markings, just pure war-forged functionality. And they were terrifying. One of the smaller human transports touched down nearby, deploying armored infantry in coordinated rows. They moved with mechanical precision, weapons ready, visors glowing. Drones followed, fanning out to secure the perimeter. "Strike Team Echo," the squad leader announced, saluting the Guardian. "Reporting for final sweep and recovery. Extraction window is 5 minutes." Vrel blinked, taken aback by their efficiency. No boasting, no showmanship, just grim purpose and cold execution. Thoxa emerged from behind a broken turret, dragging a damaged Kithan rifle. "They really came," she said, exhaling. "Humanity's real fleet." The Guardian didn't speak. He didn't need to. The warships above had already spoken enough. Aboard the human command carrier Vindicator, Admiral Kerrigan watched the battlefield feed with narrowed eyes. Her silver hair was pulled tight, her uniform crisp, but her gaze carried the weariness of someone who had seen too many wars. "Status of planetary control?" she asked. "Secured," her officer replied. "Kithan resistance broken. Minimal scattered holdouts." Kerrigan nodded. "Deploy ground sweepers. This planet is officially under human-Terran command." She turned to another console. A hologram of the Guardian flickered to life. "You held the line longer than expected," she said, voice steady. The Guardian inclined his head. Kithan tactics were adaptive. This operation exposed new threat parameters. "Noted. You'll be debriefed back aboard the Ares. Prepare for orbital transit." As the hologram faded, Kerrigan allowed herself a small sigh. The Kithan were growing bold again. But they had made one mistake, assuming humanity still fought like the rest of the galaxy. They didn't. They evolved faster, hit harder, and held grudges for generations. Vrel and Thoxa sat inside the human troop transport as it lifted off, the Guardian silently seated across from them. Through the small viewports, the ruins of the Kithan fortress shrank behind them, replaced by a sky filled with human firepower. "This wasn't just a response," Thoxa said softly. "This was a message." Vrel nodded, still stunned. "The Kithan wanted to impress us with their strength. They wanted dominance through spectacle. But humanity, they didn't impress us," Thoxa finished. "They terrified us." The troop bay fell into silence as the transport docked with the Ares, one of Earth's dreadnought-class warships. The hull alone stretched over 3 kilometers, bristling with enough firepower to vaporize a continent. Even orbiting alien vessels kept their distance. Inside, the Guardian was met with rows of salutes from armored personnel, scientists, and ranking officers. He passed them all without a word, heading toward the debrief chamber. Vrel and Thoxa were guided to a viewing deck. From there, they saw it all, the full Terran fleet. Not just destroyers and carriers, but siege platforms, stealth cruisers, planet crackers, and something else. At the edge of the fleet hung a colossal ship, shaped like a blade stabbed into the stars. It wasn't just a warship. It was a deterrent. "The Leviathan," a technician said, noticing their stare. "We bring her out only when entire systems need to remember who they're dealing with." Vrel's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You don't just defend. You prepare for annihilation." The technician smirked. "We don't start wars. We end them." Meanwhile, word of the Kithan defeat and the human response spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The United Galactic Council met in emergency session. Dozens of species, some of whom had once mocked or dismissed humanity, now sat in stunned silence as they watched footage from the battlefield. The Guardian, the fortress, the war machines, and then the fleet. Some were awed. Others were horrified. A few remained in stubborn denial. But one thing was certain. No one could ignore humanity now. Representatives from the Varn Dominion, who had once called Earth a mud ball of noisy bipeds, now requested urgent diplomatic channels. Even the Droken Syndicate, known for piracy and slave raids, declared a ceasefire on human supply routes. Humanity hadn't given a speech. They hadn't made threats. They hadn't postured. They'd sent one Guardian, and then they sent a fleet. Inside the Ares, Admiral Kerrigan met with Vrel and Thoxa. You two fought well, she said. You saw the enemy firsthand, and you didn't run. Vrel bowed his head. Thank you, Admiral. But, I must ask, why didn't you bring this level of force sooner? Kerrigan folded her arms. Because we wanted to see who our friends were, and who only wanted us weak. Thoxa glanced nervously at the observation windows. The galaxy is going to change, isn't it? Kerrigan nodded slowly. It already has. The moment they fired on our people thinking we'd beg, thinking we'd break like the others, they signed their own damn fate. She turned to a console and tapped a display. A map of the galaxy lit up, but now, several sectors were highlighted in red. These are Kithan strongholds. We're not waiting anymore. Operation Dominion Strike begins in 72 hours. Vrel stiffened. You're launching a full invasion? Correction, Kerrigan said. We're showing them what happens when you mistake humanity's patience for weakness. She looked directly at him. And if the rest of the galaxy has a problem with that, they can take a number. Back on the surface, scattered Kithan survivors watched the retreating human ships from hiding, their morale shattered. One Kithan commander limped through the ruins of the fortress, dragging his injured leg behind him. He stared skyward, trembling, as the last of Earth's warships faded from view. Behind him, a young Kithan soldier whispered, "We told the galaxy they'd be impressed, that they'd see our might and bend." The commander didn't answer at first. Then, with a broken voice, he said, "They didn't bend. They brought hell instead." He dropped to his knees, claws digging into the scorched earth. They weren't impressed. They were preparing. Later, in deep space, a message pulsed through the network. Simple, undeniable. It came from Earth, tagged with the official seal of the Terran Command. To the galactic community. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to bow. We do not strike first, but we will strike last. This is your only warning. Next time, we won't bring one guardian. We'll bring the whole damn fleet. Humanity out. The stars above the Kithan-controlled region were no longer quiet. Where once their fleets patrolled unchallenged, arrogant, and full of pride, now dark shapes slipped through space, shadows with teeth. Human warships. They didn't announce their arrival. They didn't threaten. They simply appeared. Silent. Inevitable. Operation Dominion Strike had begun. The first target was the Kithan stronghold on Veshkar Prime, a fortified planet, bristling with defense satellites, orbital platforms, and a fleet of 35 vessels. The Kithan High Command considered it impenetrable, untouchable. They were wrong. The humans didn't even send a full fleet. Just a fraction. One task force led by the dreadnought Vindicator, with flanking support from the carriers Ajax and Helios. They dropped out of FTL like ghosts, their stealth systems bypassing early warning sensors. Within minutes, coordinated jamming scrambled the entire Kithan defense grid. Satellites went blind. Comms went dark. And then came the first strike. Kinetic rods, untraceable and faster than thought, slammed into ground-based shields with the force of extinction events. Entire fortresses vanished into mushrooming clouds of dust and shattered alloy. From orbit, railgun fire rained down like divine punishment. The Vindicator's main battery fired once, and an entire Kithan cruiser shattered into 3 glowing pieces. In less than 15 minutes, the skies over Veshkar belonged to humanity. The Kithan fleet tried to respond. Their ships surged forward, firing everything they had. It didn't matter. The human ships moved like predators, anticipating every angle. They absorbed what little fire got through their shields and returned it tenfold. Precision, discipline, unrelenting destruction. The Kithan flagship, Bloodfang, attempted a desperate retreat. It didn't make it far. One of Earth's hunter-killer stealth ships, the Whispering Blade, caught it mid-warp and detonated a warp destabilizer inside its core. There were no survivors. From the bridge of the Vindicator, Admiral Kerrigan stood without a word, watching the destruction unfold. She didn't gloat. She didn't cheer. She simply nodded. Veshkar is down, her officer confirmed. Resistance shattered. Casualties minimal on our end. Begin recovery protocols, Kerrigan ordered. Deploy humanitarian units. And prepare the next jump coordinates. She walked to the observation window, hands clasped behind her back. This is what they wanted, she murmured. To impress us with their power. To provoke us. They thought we'd hesitate. Now, humanity didn't hesitate. It moved. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as reports from Veshkar spread. On the galactic networks, footage of the battle went viral. The view from a fleeing civilian transport showed Earth's warships gliding through Kithan fire like titans. Unstoppable, untouchable. In council chambers across alien empires, panic rippled like a shockwave. The Kithan Empire had been feared for over 2 centuries. Their ships were massive, their weapons brutal, their warriors relentless. But Earth didn't just beat them, it erased their aura of invincibility. And it wasn't done. A week later, 3 more Kithan planets fell, each one faster than the last. No speeches, no mercy. Humanity wasn't posturing anymore. They were sending a message, written in fire and steel. Back aboard the Ares, the Guardian sat in the war room with Kerrigan and her senior staff. Vrel and Thoxa had been given provisional status as diplomatic observers. Now, they stood silently behind the Guardian, watching the holographic map display expanding zones of Terran control. Their empire is cracking, Kerrigan said. Most of their border systems have either gone dark or surrendered. She pointed at the Kithan core worlds. These are next. We estimate full collapse within 60 standard days. The Guardian spoke at last, voice low and calm. They will resist to the last world, to the last soldier. They can resist, Kerrigan replied, but it won't change the outcome. Vrel shifted uncomfortably. What will happen to the civilians? Kerrigan looked at him, and this time, her expression softened. We're not here to burn their people. We're not monsters. Once the fleets stand down, our relief teams go in. Food, shelter, medicine. But if they keep fighting? Thoxa asked. Then we do what we must, Kerrigan said. Silence followed. And then she added, we didn't want this war. But if they want to see what humanity looks like when it stops pulling punches, they'll get the full picture. Far away, in the deepest halls of the Kithan High Command, Supreme Warlord Dravik struck the table with his clawed fist. How, he snarled. How is this possible? They were primitives. Children. General Vorek, his scales scorched from the Veshkar defeat, replied hoarsely. We underestimated them. We thought they'd fight like everyone else. Dravik spat acid. We built this empire by breaking worlds. We fed our enemies to the void. They aren't like our past enemies, Vorek said. They don't fear death. They prepare for it. They embrace it. Their machines, their fleets. Dravik snarled. Then we show them what desperation looks like. We activate the Black Protocols. Vorek hesitated. That will wipe out millions of our own people. Dravik's eyes glowed red. So be it. If we fall, we'll drag them into the abyss with us. Within days, the Kithan activated ancient planet killers, orbital self-destruct beacons meant to deny enemies the spoils of conquest. But the humans anticipated it. Their cyber warfare units jammed activation codes. Terran infiltration teams hit key relay stations ahead of schedule, disabling detonation sequences mid-countdown. One by one, the Kithan's last gambits failed. Worse, their allies began to defect. Minor species that once feared the Kithan now turned to Earth for protection. Others offered intelligence, secrets, even former warlords in exchange for clemency. Humanity didn't just win the war. They were rewriting the power structure of the galaxy. And then it came. The final battle. The Kithan homeworld, Thralkar, bristled with the last remnants of their empire's might. Hundreds of warships, atmospheric fortresses, shield arrays that spanned continents. They thought it would buy them time. That humanity would hesitate one last time before total annihilation. But the Leviathan arrived. Not in stealth. Not hidden. It emerged from the void like a god. 10 kilometers long. A living arsenal. The moment its main cannon activated, every race watching the battlefield held their breath. When it fired, the sky above Thralkar split in half. The orbital defense ring, the pride of the Kithan Armada, was gone in one shot. After that, no Kithan ship remained standing for longer than 30 minutes. Their flagship, the Crimson Howl, tried to ram the Leviathan in a suicide charge. The Terran vessel didn't move. It let the ship come. And just before impact, it released a full barrage from its secondary guns, slicing the Howl into dust before it even touched the hull. The message was clear. Humanity no longer feared anything. After 6 hours of total dominance, Earth's fleet stood over a quiet, broken planet. Admiral Kerrigan transmitted the final message. To the remaining Kithan forces. This is your only mercy. Lay down your arms. Cease all resistance. Your empire is over. No reply came, until one lone voice crackled over the calm. We thought you would be impressed, that you would marvel at our strength, that you would fear our machines. Kerrigan replied coldly. You were right. We were impressed. She leaned forward. And then we sent ours. Weeks passed. The war was over. Humanity didn't enslave the Kithen. They didn't raise their cities or salt their fields. Instead, they helped rebuild, with strict oversight and deep scars left as reminders. Across the galaxy, embassies to Earth opened at record pace. Human diplomats, soldiers, and engineers became household names on worlds that once barely acknowledged humanity's existence. But most importantly, Earth was no longer seen as the young species. Now, they were something else. Something older species feared and respected. In a garden aboard the Ares, the Guardians stood beside Vrel and Thoxa. The stars were calm again. No smoke, no fire, just peace, earned peace. You were right, Vrel said quietly. This changed everything. The Guardian nodded. Thoxa asked, what happens now? The Guardian's gaze turned distant. Now the galaxy watches, and waits, and remembers. Remembers what? She asked. He turned to face her, the faintest trace of a smile at the corner of his scarred mouth. That Earth doesn't need to impress anyone, because when we act, he looked to the stars one last time. It's not for applause. It's for victory.